Customerland is a podcast about customers, how to get more of them, how to keep them, what makes them tick. We talk to the experts, the technologies, and occasionally actual people, customers, to find out what they're all about. So if you're a CX pro, a loyalty marketer, a brand owner, an agency planner, if you're a CRM and personalization geek, if you're a customer service, CSAT, NPS nerd, you finally have a home. I'm Mike Giambattista. Welcome to Customerland. We'll talk about your books shortly, but you've got quite a background. I've seen something of your CV. It's not what I would call linear. But that probably has contributed to your perspective on life and business. And, maybe just tell us about a little bit where you came from and how you got to this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, from a business standpoint, where I came from is I went to USC, got a marketing degree, and I wanted to, but I was also a cartoonist already. I was already published in the LA papers, and I wanted to mix the two. I wanted to mix cartooning and personalization to just become a factor and put it into direct mail campaigns. But I wanted to do it for these very, very glamorous clients, all these magazine publishers. They were some of the biggest, most sophisticated users and testers of direct response. And so I wanted to set it up there. There was a problem though. David Ogilvy, do you remember him? I know
Sure.
We're all old enough to remember him. So David used to say that he was, for those who don't know, he was the original thought leader, I would say, in marketing and advertising. And so he used to say that people don't buy from clowns, that humor doesn't work in marketing and advertising. So all of his followers would say the same thing. Let's say, for example, up on stage when they're giving a talk about how to succeed in direct mail. Well, so I had that headwind, but here's what pushed me through. I knew that readership surveys were saying that cartoons were almost always the best read and remembered parts of magazines and newspapers. And I just thought, well, that's it. I mean, there's such a powerful device. I'm just going to go ahead anyway. And so that led to all kinds of crazy things in my life. One was I got my first two assignments, Rolling Stone and Bon Appetit. And so I created—
Not bad first gigs.
Not bad. So I created these test campaigns for them. They went up against their controls. The most effective thing they'd ever mailed in those positions in their campaigns. And the two first pieces I did beat their controls. I was like a rookie walking onto, well, we're talking about probably the Red Sox, right? But walking onto Fenway Park and hitting 2 Grand Slam home runs. And so from that came a bunch of things. One is that I thought, okay, that's my opening. I will reach out to the rest of the publishing industry to really, I needed to reach out to about maybe 24 people. And these were VPs of circulation or consumer marketing at companies like Time Inc. and Condé Nast and the Wall Street Journal and Forbes and so on. So just about 24 of them. And I just thought, I don't know how I'm going to reach out to them, but I want to send them a sample of a personalized cartoon. And then I'm just going to send them a note with that says, hey, this is a device I just used to beat the controls for Rolling Stone and Bon Appetit. And I think we should put these to the test for your titles. And that thing changed my life. I mean, that launched, I got through to all of them. Not only that, but all of them agreed to meet and all of them became clients. So it was 100% response.
Wow.
And conversion. I'm sorry, 100% response, meeting rate, and then conversion. And it was worth millions of dollars to launch my business. And it all came from a campaign that went to 24 people. It cost me about $100. And so that led to writing how to get a meeting with anyone eventually. But also during that time, cartooning was a big feature of what I was doing. And so I thought, well, okay, it launched my agency, and I need to offer more than just my cartooning. I need to offer, I want to bring in my favorite cartoonists into my group. And so I recruited, again, I don't know if you'll remember these names, but Gahan Wilson and Eldon Dedini from Playboy, and then a bunch of New Yorker cartoonists. And so Bob Mankoff and Arnie Levin and Leo Cullum and all these these were my heroes of cartooning. And they would, I would work with them so much on these campaigns, and I'd go out to New York because most of them were in New York City, and hang out with them. And really I ended up being mentored by these cartoonists. I didn't realize, nobody realized that was happening, but that's what happened. That was one of those outcomes as well. And then I mentioned the book, or my first book, how to get a meeting with anyone, popped out of that. And my whole career started with creating direct mail campaigns for publishers.
That's wild. I guess if all 24 of your outreach prospects responded with 100% response rate, you almost have to write a book at that point, because that's miraculous. Kind
of, except that all I thought, at that point, I just thought, well, that was weird. What just happened? and then I thought, how far can I go with this? And I started sending cartoons to presidents and prime ministers and celebrities, and just a lot of mischief actually with the cartoons, and lots of C-level folks. And I was getting through, and I thought, well, man, aren't I cool? I've got a secret weapon. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's how silly of me, because look, everyone has to get meetings. Everyone has to deal with this issue of, well, how do you break through to these people who can change everything in your career and just change the scale of what you're doing? What's everyone else doing? And that was that focus outward is what really helped and changed everything, because then I started coming across all these crazy stories of what people were doing to get meetings. And I got that 100% response rate right off the bat I mentioned. I couldn't talk about that at all, because if I had, again, David Ogilvy was probably the progenitor of this, but the experts also used to say that 100% response rates were absolutely impossible in direct response. They probably are in direct response, but this wasn't direct response. I don't know what to call it, but it wasn't quite direct response. And so I couldn't talk about the fact that I sent that campaign out and got 100% response rate. But once I started talking to some of these other people who had these interesting methods for breaking through, like let's say Dan Waldschmidt, who sends swords, he has these swords made up for these CEOs of companies that are in trouble. He runs a turnaround consultancy, and so when he finds someone who has a story of missed earnings estimates in the news, he has a sword made up by the prop maker who made all the swords for the movie Gladiator, and he sends it out in this beautiful felt-lined wooden box and a handwritten note. There's no branding on it. I mean, there's no logos or anything, just a handwritten note from Dan to you, the CEO of whoever he's writing to. And he's saying, hey, listen, business is war, and I noticed you lost a battle recently. Just wanted to let you know, if you ever need a few extra hands in battle, we've got your back. And that was the whole point of sending the sword. And he was getting 100% response rate. And others were getting these, and actually one was getting somewhere between 300 and 400% response to his contact campaign.
Each year for the past 20 years or so, the world's best marketers have been gathering in Chicago for 2.5 days of high-level learning and networking. It's called CRMC. On my calendar, I've placed a hard hold on June 7th through the 9th so that I can be there and be a part of what's about to happen in retail, in loyalty, and in technology. You should be there too. You can learn more and you can register in the link below this podcast, or you can go directly to the event website at thecrmc.com. That's thecrmc.com. I go to my fair share of events throughout the year. CRMC is my one can't miss event of the year. I hope to see you there.
We're talking about how to grow your business like a weed. And so that book, I just need to explain real quickly that book came from a long time ago. I was driving down the Santa Monica Freeway, and it could have been any freeway anywhere, but it was the Santa Monica Freeway in LA. And there are 6 lanes of traffic coming one way, 6 coming the other way. It's all concrete and roaring tires. And then there's a 40-foot, I think it's about 40 feet wide median in the middle. It's all concrete though. And I noticed a dandelion growing from a crack in the concrete. median, and that is something we see all the time. We're seeing it all the time, right? They're all out right now, so we're seeing it right now. But this particular time, as I drove by, I just thought, well, look at that. It looks happy. It looks, those happy yellow flowers and the seed pods, and it's bouncing around in the smoggy turbulence of the cars going by. And I just thought, it looks really happy running its process, just making a living from a crack, didn't care that it ended up in a crack in the middle of the freeway. I mean, it wasn't saying to itself probably, well, this sucks. I saw myself as living at the beach, something like that. It didn't let anything like that get in the way. And I just thought, that's remarkable, because we don't see, I'd pick any other plants. We don't see oak trees or pine trees or rose bushes or petunias growing out of cracks in the concrete of anything. It's just weeds. And so it got me thinking, as I whizzed by, what is it about weeds that are so special? How are they doing this? Do they have a model that they all use, like some sort of a unified model? And if they do, is it applicable to our businesses? And I just resolved at that point to, I just wanted to take that lesson, or take in a lot more lessons from weeds, and understand what it is they're doing to survive and thrive in places and under conditions that the rest of us would wilt under. I mean, other plants don't show up there. So what is it about them? And I came to realize that they all follow this one formula for growth. And I think it's not only a formula for business. I would say it's sort of a theory of everything about growing anything. And so so this has been ruminating as a book idea for quite a long time. And then you mentioned Kathy Ireland and General Barry McCaffrey, and I also interviewed David Petraeus, who also a 4-star general and the former director of the CIA and a CIA station chief. I was trying to understand. I thought they kind of live in a weed-like world, so I wanted to really understand the essence of how the same strategies that weeds use show up in business and help us grow. And just sort of in human life. So that's why we ended up with really a pretty disparate group of people. But I also interviewed a lot of business experts, startup experts, et cetera, just all kinds of, and also botanists and weed scientists. Didn't know there were any until writing the book, but weed scientists. And I really just wanted to get an idea of what is it that weeds are doing, and how has that shown up in, let's say, the lives of Kathy Ireland. And Kathy is I don't think she's quite a billionaire, but she's quite well off. Of course, we knew her from being an SI or Sports Illustrated model, and then being just a high fashion model. But she realized at some point that she's going to be an old model. And I think Paulina Poroskova talks about this a lot, that she says, I can't get dates, and which seems really odd to me. But okay, I don't know why, Paulina, but I'm sure you'll get them. So, but she was sitting with her team one day in her kitchen saying, what am I going to do? I need to reinvent myself. And so what can I do? What are my unfair advantages, which is part of the weeds model? I mean, the weeds leverage a fierce mindset, an expansive, fierce, aggressive mindset, even though they don't have brains, but they do. You can see it in your garden and in your yard. They leverage that and unfair advantages against collective scale, and they do it according to a process that has been honed over millions of years, but it's able to adapt almost instantly to any challenge. So that's their model. That's how they do it. And so Kathy was asking her team, what are my unfair advantages that I can take into the next chapter of my life? And of course, she was well known. And she was able to parlay that into, she's a branding empire at this point. And she told me, though, that she always thought of herself as a weed. That was
no kidding.
And so you could say that her career grew like a weed, and then eventually her business grew like a weed, and it did it through a lot of. I mean, I think that the two characteristics that really stand out to me, and they stand out to me as things that will be talking about these missions that we'll serve with the people that show up to our growth summits that we're setting up all over the world. And so I think these would be just a small group of entrepreneurs who are there to apply the weed strategy model to their business to help them grow. I think one of the things that's really interesting about weeds is that they thrive in disrupted ground. I mean, they thrive best in disrupted ground. That's, in other words, our yards, our gardens, farms, and so forth. And they live for that. I don't know if they live for that. Let's just say, though, that their methods, everything about it, their model, their methods, their tools, all helps them thrive in ground that's just been disrupted. So ground that has just scattered all the other plants away. That's where they thrive best. And I think that says a lot about using weed strategy to thrive during other disruptions in our lives. And we're always going through disruptions. We're in one now. We just came out of one, a big one, the pandemic, but now we're in at least a slowdown, if not a recession. So it's just a constant thing. AI will be another huge disruption. So how do we deal with all that? And I think that we deal with that in some pretty simple ways. We develop unfair advantages for ourselves. These are advantages that they're not really unfair advantages. They're not illegal. It's just things that we can bring to market that help us compete. So our competitors might think of them as unfair advantages. And then the other is that weeds are natural collaborators. And so it's all about developing these unfair advantages and collaborations. And collaborations they're magical.